Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me and for giving me the opportunity to talk about this topic. Going into a little bit about me and my journey and what brings me to want to do this talk is a lot of my experience is kind of boiled into one. So, a little bit about me. I started college and I got my first job in like 2020. It was a sales associate, it was nothing crazy. I was doing my AS in information technology. Once we get to 2021, 2022, I start a position as an Intel representative. This is also around when I started my bachelor's degree in IT management and cybersecurity. Now, when I was an Intel representative, basically you're working inside of Best Buy for a third party, but this was great because it was basically my first tech job because Intel was in the name, even though you were mainly just responsible for selling computers and stuff in different Best Buys. Moving a little bit forward, August 2023, senior year of my bachelor's, I go, okay, perfect. I can start looking at all these internships that said senior in bachelor's and stuff. Start looking at those. For some reason, they want you to already have experience, um, which was terrifying. I started panicking. I was like, how am I supposed to have already done some internships when all these internships wanted me in my senior year? I felt like I was already 5 or 10 years behind, and I had literally not even graduated and really got a first official fancy job yet. So once that panic set in, I went, I don't even know what roles I want to do. I'm getting very concerned looking at LinkedIn, and all of these entry level roles are like 3 and 5 years. I want to talk to people who actually work in the industry, what those jobs are like, and just see what will interest me. And so, since obviously I'm based out of Florida, there was a Florida Tech Hub event being hosted at FAU, absolutely free to attend. So I registered and I got my butt over there. And ultimately, a lot of people ended up telling me that they look for people who have worked help desk before. If you're trying to get like entry level cybersecurity and whatnot, they liked people who started help desk because that was a really good baseline. And I went, brilliant. I have that opportunity potentially. I've built my computer when I was like 14. Now I at least have an idea. Now, based on my classes that I did in my IT associate's degree, I knew I wasn't going to enjoy help desk too much because I didn't like the idea of having to be the printer fixer, but gave me a lot more background than just fixing printers, surprisingly. Now, after taking away from that event, October 2023, I managed to get a help desk job miraculously. And I'm going to go over kind of how I leverage some of my other experience to be able to try and get that. Now, November 2023, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. I still want to go to more conferences. The Florida Tech Hub event was awesome, but there weren't too many talks there. It was a really good networking opportunity. So I attend API's annual cybersecurity conference for the oil and natural gas industry. It was based out of Texas, but it was about 5 minutes away from where my partner lives in Texas. So I got like a $70 Spirit flight and I got my butt over there because the tickets were normally $500. So I went, if they're letting cybersecurity students attend for free and normal people pay $500, it's probably going to be worth it, maybe. And it was because I got to go to talks that talked about things in the industry. I got to meet a gentleman who I networked with and then actually recommended me for my internship, which led to me then getting an internship at my dream company in May of 2024 with very minimal experience so far. And then November 2024, they, for some reason, I'm kidding, hired me full time, which was very good, a huge experience for me. So I was an OT community program coordinator, which basically I work at Dragos. Dragos is an industrial cybersecurity company. We have a program where we give away our platform for free, and I get to do that. So basically, they were paying me to give stuff away for free to under resourced water, electric utilities. So I was loving that. But that's kind of how I got to this point. Is there was a lot of luck involved. There was also a lot of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. There was a lot of panic, and I feel like although there are definitely some things that I could go back and change, there is also a very good amount of things that I feel like I did that helped me get to the areas that helped me get to the next area. So that leads us to what I kind of want to talk about today. So, what's the plan? The plan that we're going to discuss is actions to take outside of the classroom. I'm going to go over resumes and interviews because just putting together a resume can kind of be intimidating. Now, when I was in my first half of college, ChatGPT and stuff like language models didn't really exist in that form. Now that they do, it is way easier and much more efficient time wise to build resumes and kind of make action plans for yourself but I know there's not a lot of people who are a fan of AI, so I have some non-AI options as well because I totally get it. Also, what do I even want to do? Let's try and find out because I was in the same boat and it is not bad not to know because they expect you to start high school where you finally start taking classes that maybe have some type of substance of jobs in the real world and you get like 45 minutes of that once every other day for 3.5 years. And then they're like, all right, pick your future career forever. Good luck. So let's try and figure out what we want to do, make a plan, how to network, going to conferences and some other stuff that I think is extremely valuable. So that's going to lead us into the first part, which is what I have been trying to tell myself, and a motto that I'm trying to get is the what do I do and where do I start? So first, I talked a lot about being scared. So ironically, the what do I do is going to be to calm down because as it turns out, even though it seems very intimidating, it is absolutely okay. And you can take a couple deep breaths and realize that you're doing great and we can take some steps back and you're not 10 gazillion billion light years behind like I thought I was. So moving into the where do I start? If we want to start figuring out first step, what type of job do we want? I know this is typically cybersecurity focused, but you might end up discovering that you like something that's outside of cybersecurity. You also might realize, like I did once I went to my first conference, there are so many different doors. Cybersecurity is almost like space where each star is a different little section of cybersecurity. So you can say, oh, I'm going to go to space. It's like, okay, well, where in space are you going? Right? Are you going to the moon? Are you going to the North Star? Like where are we going? Right? Because it is so big and there's so many different options. So what I like to say for the where do I start, to get an idea of the field you want to go into, research, or again, this is where I'm talking about efficiency. You can talk to a chatbot. You can go, hey, I want my day-to-day to maybe look remote, or hey, I really like being physical in person, or hey, I really want something that has a good balance of me not having to talk to people because I'm not really a people person, or me getting to have all the interaction in the world because that's the type of personality type I am, right? So at least where I am, we have malware analysts, we have incident responders, we have consultants, and all of those roles kind of incorporate different types of day-to-days, right? Our malware analysts are very much so in their own world. When I was working help desk, I kid you not, we had the goblin cave. It was four of us in each one in each corner. We kept that room dark and very cold. And that might be the style that you like. Or you might like something where you're more forward facing, such as a consultant who's going out to sites and being more physical. And so if you can now research that, which is also great, there's a lot of resources out there, but it's going to save you a lot of time to maybe talk to a chatbot because it might pop up super niche things that are hitting a keyword that you're saying that might not otherwise pop up if you're just Googling or looking through other people's experiences. So once you have an idea of what you want your day-to-day to look like, you can have it generate top 10 positions that fit your preferences and fit specifically what you want, right? Because we're personalizing this to you. Have it generate the top 10 positions. Now look at those roles and start doing research now as well. You don't even have to use the chatbot for this next step. Step 4, watch day in the life videos on YouTube. Look at maybe Reddit or go on YouTube and look at regular people that have that role, maybe doing talks at conferences, and get an idea of the way they go about speaking about their role. Do a lot of them have a lot of passion for what they're doing? A lot of them are going to be very honest if what they're doing is also very, very time consuming. And you'll get an idea. A lot of people really like working constantly. They want something that they can just melt themselves into. And some people are really going to value having a very strict work-life balance. They're like, I enjoy doing this. I want to do this. I want to clock out. I don't want to look around the world and be constantly thinking about my job. Whereas some people, the reason they got into that job is that that's because all they saw in the world was that. And so it's 100% dependent on your personality. It's 100% dependent on you. None are better than the other. None are cooler than the other. I mean, some might sound cooler, but it's cool if it's what you like doing. And so once you watch those videos, you might watch somebody talk about what they're doing as maybe a SOC analyst or a pen tester, and you might go, that's not what I want my day in the life to look like. Like, that's not what I want to do. One of my colleagues, he's a consultant, he really likes his job, and he's told me multiple times that he was very, very close to quitting because he hated writing reports so much. Like, he hated having to sit down for like a week, right? Because they'll go on an engagement for a week and then we come back and we have to write this huge report and break it down for a customer. He was like, I hated doing those. He was like, I literally thought about quitting multiple times because that was the only feedback I get on my reviews was that my reports sucked. He was like, and they did because I hated writing them. And so if you're somebody who you're like, oh, I want to do pen testing, or I think consulting would be great, I want to go out and get hands on with this, I want to be active all the time, are you in the back of your head thinking, hey, there's going to be probably like the week following all of that great action that I'm going to have to write that down and break it down and basically write an essay. And now with AI tools, you can put in your notes and it makes it a little bit easier, but some people still might not enjoy that. So once you have your day in the life, once you've established what you think you want to do based on now reading about it, seeing people talk about it, and having all that supportive information, start looking up those roles on LinkedIn. Go, okay, I narrowed it down. I do want to be a stock analyst, or I do want to be a malware analyst. What do these roles require? If you go on LinkedIn and like 5 of these roles want you to have, let's just say Security Plus or something, you can now start studying that while in school. I know that these things are expensive. I'd like to throw it out there that CompTIA, they actually have like an education section on their store, and with your student email, you can get discounts on those vouchers because certifications are very expensive. But just as an example, right? While you're in school, you can start working on these side things. Or once you end school, you can make that your goal to work alongside. But if you know that the role that you now desire is very consistent, let's say like 5 or 8 out of 10 of every role you look on LinkedIn, they want you to have a bachelor's degree. Or hey, they don't actually care if you have a bachelor's degree, they want you to have an associate's and this one cert. If that's genuinely what you feel like you want to do and you've now seen all of the supporting information, you can pivot. We're getting to a day and age where school is very valuable, but certifications and experience and projects are now starting to almost carry the same merit because companies want you to be teachable and they want you to be capable. And if they can get you in quick and you have a personality they like and they think that they can really run with what you're able to do now, they're going to overlook the formality of school if you've maybe done a boot camp or have certificates, because at the end of the day, you still have to study for these certificates. If they're from institutes like SANS or CompTIA, they know the standards that you have to meet, or OffSec. OffSec has phenomenal certifications that are industry recognized as well. Like those are hard to pass. So if they see you have those, they recognize that you have the skills that they also look like from school, which is basically being able to sit down and study and retain information and apply yourself and be self-regulated. And so that's kind of the thinking of the where do we start. So moving on to now you have an idea of what you want to do. You've identified your desired role. Now, you need to make a plan for yourself. When I'm talking about figuring out what certifications and stuff you want, and you go, oh, okay, I found out like if I want to be a malware analyst, I need XYZ certification. Or if I want to be a consultant, like I need the Security Plus or something. Like that is in every single one of them, or bachelor's in every single one of them. If you're just starting school, your 1 year goal is probably just planning out all the courses you're going to take and studying for them. But if you're halfway through college, or if you're on the back end of college, maybe in a bachelor's degree, your plan should incorporate not just your schooling, but your certifications. You want to see yourself with XYZ certification in 3 years or by graduation. Or if we're talking about once you have that role, you identify that goal role, your 1 year plan is to maybe start an entry level role that allows you to pivot. I hate to say it, and as much as I am going to be a Debbie Downer here, I know that when we look on LinkedIn and everything, we see these job roles and they're like, oh, entry level, and they want you to have like 8 years of experience. Those are ridiculous. But cybersecurity is the one industry that I feel very confident saying that entry level should be having like 2 to 5 years of experience in some regular technology. Because it's not like it's retail, right? Where it's like, okay, you genuinely can come in and learn. And for some reason, they still want you to have 3 years of experience. It's a role where entry level is literally dependent on you already having years of understanding of base technology. And so it's very hard to go in entry level, which would essentially mean that you don't have the understanding of like technology concepts and be expected to now secure them, right? So when we talk about entry level cybersecurity, you want to have that understanding of the basics to regular technology, right? I work in a sector called operational technology. Dragos, it's an industrial cybersecurity company. We focus in like manufacturing, electric, water. You're talking about the type of cyber attacks that have physical implications, right? So if somebody hacks into your water in your town, they're going to change the chemical level, try and poison your water. Somebody gets into an electric plant, they're going to try and make a substation explode. That has physical implications. So when you're talking about an entry level role for that type of cybersecurity, you do genuinely need to have basic level of understanding of those environments and how the technology in them works before you're able to confidently go, okay, you're new to securing this stuff. You at least have to have that background in knowing it. And I know it sucks to say, but that's like the one instance where I think entry level roles, it's at least a little bit valid to want you to have 1 to 3 years of experience doing something else in that realm before we can just throw you into that fire, right? Because as everyone says, when you start a role, it's like fire hose. You're just going to be consuming so much. But genuinely, I do think it's a little bit valid when it comes to cybersecurity. And circling back to the make a plan for yourself, if that 3 to 5 year plan, again, cybersecurity, that 1 year should potentially be someone like help desk, maybe a SOC analyst. That's more on like the IT side that has a transitional is like on the same team as the SOC analyst, if that makes sense. We also have network admins. We have like different tiers to help desk. Like there's normally help desk level 1 and 2. I was a help desk analyst, so technically we were equivalent of like a 2 to 3 level. Kind of, that's what they like to tell us, probably to make us feel better, but not really. So there's different levels, and you want to plan ahead. Like when I took my internship with Dragos, I was working full-time help desk. So I was technically taking a step back, going to a part-time internship with no guarantee for a full-time role. However, I really liked the mission, but I really recognized the potential of the company, and it aligned with my 3 and 5 year plan. Because my help desk, that was me fulfilling my 1 year plan, which was to get that entry level experience. So I had my 8 months doing that, technically taking a step back with an internship, but it supported my 3 to 5 year plan of being able to work full time in an actual cybersecurity company, not just working cybersecurity for maybe a different company, but like actually working in something dedicated to this field. And so, again, I'm going to preach this probably the whole time. I did get lucky with my situation, it's very unique. However, that strategy of being able to, if you have the opportunity, I know not everybody has the opportunity, but make those transitions where it's like, okay, this isn't a role I want, but if I'm capable of taking that role and being okay with everything else, it's opening those doors for me in the future. And it might not work on the first time. You might have to do it a second time because there's other people doing that same thing competing with you. But if you're taking these initiatives, there's less people competing with you. And so it's all about timing, and especially in this industry like networking. But once you have that plan for yourself, you know what you want to do. You want to start working on the projects and experience, because if you're in college, it's okay if you can't get a job right away. Like for me, I had built my computer and I had started experimenting with virtual machines and trying to do websites like Hack the Box and whatnot. And taking that initiative outside of the classroom, because you can go in an interview and you go, hey, like I am full-time student, I cannot work right now, so these are the things that I try and do in my free time to keep myself relevant and to keep myself learning new things. That makes you stand out because you're taking initiative outside of an environment where you're forced to do things. And so those types of things can sometimes, not all the time, replace or at least partially credit the experience that some companies are looking for. Another goal, don't stop trying to grow. If you feel like you love the job that you have and you landed something that you're very comfortable with and you want to see yourself for like 3 years while you're trying to build up other things to pivot around, it is very important to not stop trying to grow during that time. It is extremely valuable to keep trying to work on yourself. And you might discover that you love new things or that you actually were missing some details on something else. And constantly improving will just show that your upper management, show to your upper management and your teachers and whatnot that you're trying, that you like what you're doing, that you're interested. And that allows you to stand out compared to some other people. Because if you have somebody who's a candidate and they go, oh yeah, I finished up school and I've just been job looking. And I go, hey, because I did an interview literally today. Hey, like what have you been doing in the in-between time of that? What does that look like? And it's basically just going, hey, I'm just looking for jobs right now. I'm not doing anything. And I go, oh, have you been trying to look at what's going on in the industry? Like, do you read news articles, listen to podcasts, watch videos? Are you trying to do anything to keep yourself still inside the industry while you're in the middle of jobs? If it's not, and that's something if you are doing, you definitely should mention, because if you go, oh man, they just asked me if I what I'm doing and I'm in between jobs or like I'm in school, that's not a nail in the coffin for you, especially if you're doing other things to keep yourself relevant. Now, I'm not saying to dodge questions in an interview, but just be honest. And I'll go over this a little bit more later, but you can always go, hey, to be honest, I'm not, but I'm doing XYZ. And that's something I'm going to go over a little bit in my resume slide because that is huge. It is very, very valuable. But to pivot to advice, my old boss, Michael McGibbon, they basically told me to create a job for yourself. And when I started this internship at Dragos, it was a program that I was managing. We give this stuff away for free. It was part time, and I had no guarantee of full time. So I started creating a plan and making a 1 to 3 5-year plan for the program of how I saw it, how it could turn into a project, how it could grow. And they were like, oh, this is great. And as it started getting a little bit bigger, I said, hey, part-time for this isn't going to probably work. And so that essentially created the full-time job for myself that they then hired me for because I was already doing it. And I was like, when Michael McGibbon first told me this, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to make a job for myself. I'm in college. What are you talking about? But when I had started that internship and I started to see how the dynamic was around me, it clicked. And I was like, holy bananas. This is exactly what he was talking about. Like it's an opportunity and somebody else will take it if you don't, basically. Like there's always that availability there, but some people will just hesitate or not think they're capable and somebody else will take it away from them before they could do it, right? And then I asked a couple of my friends that I know because I was pulling stuff on Instagram from people I know of like, hey, what could you tell yourself? Because I'm expecting this to be people who are still in college and stuff. Like, no matter what genre of work you're going into, what is something you could tell yourself? My friend Alyssa said, don't stress too much if things don't go how you imagined, because there's always a plan B, C, D, E, F, G. And she's 100% correct. And that's actually what I found. Because again, when I was a senior, I started panicking. Things aren't going my way. I thought I'd be able to get an internship. I started freaking out. At the end of the day, I was like, wait a second. There are a lot of other options. You can do a lot of other things. Deep breaths. Everything is okay. Moving on to kind of going to events. Excuse me. What we can do outside of the classroom, outside of just the personal projects and whatnot. The really big thing that I want to advocate for is research and being yourself. Excuse me. Apologies. So I want to go over like conferences, career fairs. Honestly, even if you're like in your classes with your professors, you could technically apply these methods. Excuse me. But what I have seen when I go to conferences is some people will go up to the booth and just be like, hey, are you hiring? And that is not that is not a really good way to interact with people. When you're going to these conferences, one, your goal should technically be to go to the talks because the talks are going to be done by individuals who are in the industry, actively working in the industry. And so they typically probably like what they're doing and they'll be happy to talk with you if you're new, but you have to show initiative of doing some research. Now, one of my coworkers wanted me to mention that because I was going to mention like, oh, see if there's conferences near you free to students. Besides Miami's in February, that one's going to be a really good one. It's more for like the industrial control system side of cybersecurity that I'm in, but this industry is super, super cool. So I definitely recommend looking into it because the tickets aren't super expensive. And he wanted me to mention if you volunteer at events, you get to go for free. So even if the student discount is like way out of your budget, reach out to them and see if you can volunteer at that event because then you'd be able to attend for free. That's really good to put on your resume because that's showing industry involvement, which is another thing I'm going to go over in a little bit. So there are other ways to kind of finagle around it outside of my glossy eyed of just see if you can go to conferences because I know it's not obtainable for everyone, even if they give a discount to students. So it's not free to a student. See if you can volunteer and be able to get in that way. That's also a really good opportunity. But moving into how to make the most of being at an event or a career fair, if you're going to be going up to these companies and asking if they're hiring, you need to research the company. And this might sound silly to say, but when I was at the API conference and I went back the year after, once I had been hired full time, I was behind the booth and talking to people. And we had quite a few students come up to me. Oh my God, hi, nice to meet you. I'm so and so. Are you guys hiring? And it's a very weird interaction, at least from the person on the other side of the booth, because I don't know what job to recommend to you. I don't know if you even know what we do. And I have no idea of your work ethic or anything. Like you could be very, very qualified, but I've never worked with you. I have no idea who you are as a person. So even if you were super qualified, I might not be like, oh my God, yeah, here, apply right here, right? So what I recommend, because when I went to my first conference, I was going to every booth and I was being very honest, because that's what I really want is to be yourself, be authentic. When I was going to these booths, I said, hey, I'm new to the industry. I'm really just trying to learn. I'm a student. I had the student badge, so it's not like I could lie my way out of that one. But I want to know about what they did in the industry, what companies use them for, what they did as a role. And that was part of me wanting to figure out what jobs existed, but also just to figure out what was popular in the industry, right? Because if these companies are paying to have booths at these events, they're probably pretty well recognized in the industry. You guys are probably familiar with Cloudflare. For example, Cloudflare, I normally see have a booth at most of the conferences that I attend. Prior, I was very, very unfamiliar with Cloudflare. So that's the type of thing you want to keep in mind is that when you're at these conferences, these companies are normally utilized by a number of other companies, right? So talking with them and figuring out what they do from their perspective, one, it's showing they have initiative. Two, it's showing that you're open, honest, and you're taking those first steps. And three, that approach will lead you to a network, right? That will lead you to a potential LinkedIn connection. Because when you walk up to every booth and you go, hey, I'm so and so, I'm studying this, I'm studying cybersecurity at so and so college. I am looking for internships probably this summer. Like, oh, hey, like I'm so and so. And you have maybe a 30-second interaction. And at the end, you go, hey, can we connect on LinkedIn? They're probably not going to remember who you are. And if they are, they're just going to remember you as the person who came up looking for a network connection and not somebody who is genuinely trying to, when I say just a connection on LinkedIn, because I want to say genuinely looking for like a network, like to network with you, because there's a difference between somebody genuinely wanting to network with you and somebody just wanting the connection on LinkedIn so that they can maybe see every time you post a job role that opens or kind of haggle you if you're hiring or something. There's a difference, and it's very apparent to the person who's behind the booth. And I'm not sure if it's as apparent to the person who's going up, because at the end of the day, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are just trying to hype themselves up to even get to the booth to ask if somebody's hiring. And I totally understand the social anxiety aspect of that. But when you think about the perspective of how you're coming off to the other person, when I had the people coming up to the booth and asking me if we were hiring, I'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry, we're not, because it was true. We were not at the time, but also our company, a lot of our roles are very like senior level. So unless it's an internship that's open, we don't have anything that students would qualify for. But let's say we did. All they did was come up and tell me what they were studying and asked if we were hiring. I have no idea if they would like whatever internship we have open, right? And so you really want to set the stage for yourself to research companies. And so this also comes down to now you're going up to booths, ask them what they do, connect with these people, figure out, and trust me, you're going to get some booths that are like, oh, student, okay, bye, take our free stuff, see ya, because they want sales. That's normally what they're there for. And that's fine. Your goal is to really trying to build these connections. So if you go up to these booths and you have anyone who will give you the time of day and tell you about what they're doing, and if they're passionate and they respect that you as a student are trying to learn and they take 5-10 minutes to talk with you about the company, go over stuff and treat you almost like an equal of someone coming up who would be trying to be a customer for them, that is good. You can go, oh my goodness, thank you so much. I would love to connect with you. And they'll probably be like, yeah. And you know what you do after you have that connection the next day or that night? You message them on LinkedIn and you go, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to do that with me. I really appreciate it. This is kind of what I've been going for. What you told me either did or didn't interest me. You don't say it like that. But if it's something that wasn't necessarily what you expected, but you'd like further opinion on what you should start researching for the job you want, you open a lot of doors and you now have solidified an interaction, right? Because these people also have a gazillion people coming up to them at their booths and everything. But if you then message them and follow up like the next day or like that later that night, they're going to go, oh, this is the person I talked to today. Oh, they followed up. Like this is a long-term memory that you're creating, right? So that is my recommendation for approaching going to events and attempting to network with people at booths and stuff a little bit differently. That's what I think would have the best outcome and at least what I saw success with. Because at the end of the day, the reason I was able to network and get my connection for the internship I have is because I was going up to a bunch of different booths. And the one booth that had a gentleman who spoke with me for like 40 minutes about what they did was Dragos. And I went, oh my goodness, I have so many questions. Like, I know that I don't know XYZ. I want to know XYZ and ABC. And that type of interaction at the end, I was like, oh my goodness, thank you so much. Can we connect on LinkedIn? Yes. I messaged him later. I was like, hey, thank you so much again. Anything that you think I should start doing outside of my classes, like certifications or reading blogs, whatever, please let me know. And I now work with him and he's now my colleague. So I make fun of him all the time and we're constantly fooling around. So I've definitely gone on him. I'm like, hey, so why in the heckity heck did you recommend me for the internship? I know some of the people that also talked to you that conference did. And at the end of the day, it came down to he was like, well, you messaged me afterwards. He was like, and you didn't walk up and the first thing out of your mouth was, do you want to, like, can I get your LinkedIn? he was also like, you ask questions. Some of these people will also kind of like lie and try and make their accomplishments or what they're going over in classes sound way more than it is. At the end of the day, when people are doing interviews and interacting with people who actually work in the industry, it's very easy for them to pick apart a bluff. You're better off just telling the truth. But moving on from researching and trying to network at an event, let's go over to resumes, right? Because if we want to go into like job searching, you want to start with a resume. So we're just going to break down and make fun of my resume. So my resume for when I was trying to get the entry level help desk position that I referenced, it wasn't looking too good. I blurred out my career profile just because I figured I can't give you every information that's on my resume, although I do tend to overshare. Um, this was when I was at Intel. It was May, 2021, June 2022. Okay. So when I was applying for my help desk position, I only had the fact that I had built my own computer and that I had then taken that and gone to like some local, like family known companies in my area and built computers for them. And so I was able to spin that into partnering with pub construction and yacht industry to design, develop, and launch customized computer systems. I basically talked with them about what they'd be doing, made a budget, and picked out the parts, or like picked out what computers would be suitable for what they had. And if they wanted me to also do the setup once that was all there and like download QuickBooks and stuff, I did that for them. But I was able to make that sound very, very useful when I'm trying to do a help desk job, right? Because your goal is to curate your skills for what you wanted. So when I had worked in my sales associate position, which was at Torrid, which is like a plus size women clothing store, I was very much so spinning that sales experience, that retail customer interaction experience for the Intel role, because that was retail in a Best Buy selling computers. So, okay, I've built a computer, I have the tech background, I'm doing the AS, very much so focusing on, hey, I have the retail experience, right? So now here, we're moving a little bit. I want to highlight that I'm currently in the process of getting my bachelor's. I have the associates in IT. I have this experience that I've done outside of college and everything, which would fall under just regular like projects, personal projects, whatever you're trying to do. And then my technical skills. Obviously, my technical skills are things I'm ripping from my classes I've done so far, because I don't have any other experience on my resume that would support like web design, right? I don't have software developer on there. So really trying to pivot what you're doing for the role and alter it. So when I got my internship at Dragos, I had to take that help desk analyst role and I had to make it very much so computery. I needed to make it very obvious that I had XYZ experience. So now when I did apply for this internship, you can see how this changes. I had gone to that conference that was in Texas. And so this is how I was trying to make up for my lack of experience in cybersecurity so far. My hone in on this was, hey, the second I discovered this industry, I fell in love, and I've been doing everything I can outside of school to get me that experience, since I can't just get a job out of nowhere, right? So I've downsized some sections on my resume. I have kind of solidified what my project section is, as you can see where it had the little bit longer description for the computer builds I had done prior. Now that I have that help desk analyst experience, I don't have to rely on more bluff that I did. I can now rely on that experience that I just did in help desk, and then I can lean on my professional involvement, which is professional involvement. I'm doing my best to be involved in the profession, going to conferences and trying to interact with people who are active industry professionals in that industry. And so I went to, like I said, the cybersecurity conference for the oil and natural gas industry. This is something I probably could have improved on. I just listed off the talks and stuff. I really just used the descriptions of those talks and not the notes and actual things I learned. You probably could utilize the space on your resume better with that. I wasn't entirely sure how to do it at the time, but I'm sure nowadays it would be very easy to go, hey, ChatGPT, I'm applying for this role. Here's the description. Here's a conference I went to. These are the talks I went to. This is what I learned at said talks. Make it sound specified for this role. Because at the end of the day, when I say I'm flubbing things on my resume, I'm flubbing things that I do know to make them sound a little bit better. Like, I'm making it sound like I did much more strenuous computer builds for these companies when in reality it was like one computer each or something. But the experience was still the same. I still built it. I still inquired with them and went back and forth about, hey, like, what do you think you need? What are you going to use it for? Because the last thing an interviewer wants to do, last thing a hiring manager wants to do, and I've talked for this talk actually, I talked with our hiring managers and I was like, hey, what are things that you see on resumes that are killers for you? And it's things that you'd probably expect. They were like these big words in their skills and stuff, especially if their experience doesn't match, like expert this, high proficiency in this, when there's nothing that would support it, not even their classes. And if they do make it to an interview, when I ask you a question like, oh, um, in that last role, did you do this and that? And you go, oh, yes, kind of, but you're highlighting that on your resume. Like, for example, they asked me about my technical certificates that I have listed under my associate's degree because that's what my school gave me. But I didn't actually have to do anything special for them. It was just natural with the course progression. And so when they asked me, I was honest. He was like, so what did you do for like your technical certificate for the it was for my computer information data specialist and the technology support. And I was like, I'm gonna be honest with you. Those are just things that my college automatically gives by doing certain classes. So the networking courses, the three I had to do that were already a part of the associate's degree, equaled a certificate in whatever. So that's why I put it. And he was like, oh, cool. But if I had gone, actually, like I did XYZ for this and talked it up a little bit, it's going to be very quick that they find holes and see that you're kind of flubbing that up a little bit. So when I say fluff things that you did up, fluff them up in ways that makes what you did sound cooler, but not add things that you didn't do, because that's the last thing you want to do. Now, one thing I will say, and I know it's not obtainable for everyone, but something my dad really got on my butt about was to just have somebody do one resume for me. Pay somebody like $50 to set up a very basic resume for me so I could build off of it. So that's what these last two resumes are. These two resumes are ones that somebody had made for me that I altered very, very slightly once I had like graduated with my associates and I was able to move up because when I had applied for that Intel representative role, I just had some, and that was a local role, so it's much easier to obtain with just the default Microsoft resume pamphlet. But the issue nowadays, and what I've heard from keynote speakers at conferences, this is actually a really good note, is that the tools that they are using now to screen resumes, pre-screen resumes, if a company is utilizing one, the way that some of those templates are kind of configured trigger something in the AI to like auto reject. Like if it can't read certain parts of it because of the formatting, because it's like a pre-made template, you're going to get red markers and your resume is potentially not even going to make it through, even if you are qualified, because it has that poor formatting. So as I've grown, I've moved away from this, but it was worth the like $67 investment to have the nice lady who was doing my dad's golf resumes do mine for me. And I was able to build off of that and get an understanding of how industry professionals structure resumes. Now, with the rise of AI and everything, you probably don't have to do that as much, but I genuinely appreciate having had done that at least the first time so that I had something to build off of. Now, I'm going to go over my current resume just because I recently applied for an internal role where I am and I received it. And so I had to update my resume. So I figured it would be cool to go over a before and an after. So as you can see, the wonderful, wonderful woman who had made my resume for me, I had made some adjustments. I started changing it. It had a solid format. I've changed it a little bit. So I basically, I think it's like Leaf Code or whatever. It's just like a text-based editor where you can just write the code for your resume instead. I had ChatGPT give me like a template for one. And now I do this because all the wording is proper and it reads fine on interviews. But this is kind of how I'm formatting it now. And I've gone from adding, again, and this kind of goes with your 1, 3, 5 year plan. I'm now I'd say I'm like around the 2 mark, maybe 3 year mark. Now, instead of adding the conferences that I've attended, I've been very grateful to be able to attend 2 conferences and be able to speak at them. And so now I'm starting to add those as professional development, but it's very good to have a professional development section for yourself, whether it's the conferences you are attending, scholarships you've received. Like, for example, if you are constantly attending webinars and stuff like this, and you're getting a lot of valuable information that you feel like you can apply to maybe the role you have or the role that you're working for, I would 100% reference that Because like I said before, it is showing that you have that initiative and are taking those steps outside of a classroom, which stand out compared to someone who just have flat, all right, you did college, okay, you're working this job, what else are you doing? Whereas if somebody else was in college, is currently working that same basic level job, entry level job, right? But oh, they're attending these conferences and they're doing like this side project that they're trying to do. And if they ask you about it and you're able to on the mark respond and prove that that is accurate, you're now going to stand above another candidate who just going with the flow, got my degree, doing my entry level job, trying to move forward, right? So those are things to consider when formatting your resume and what you're trying to highlight. Now that I have certain roles, I'm highlighting different things, right? So I'm not highlighting, you'll probably have noticed from my Intel role, I highlighted different things that I did in that role, depending on every job I applied for. And that's something you should also take into consideration. I would like to say, I know when companies are throwing you like 50 applications you have to do on LinkedIn and you have to set up a stupid account for each one, and it's just a pain, and you have to do a cover letter or something for all of them. It is extremely annoying to have to update and slightly shift the wording on your resume for each and every one of them. So that I understand. That is again where I would rely on AI, because when I used to do resumes for my friends and stuff, I would spend probably 4 hours at night. I'd be like, all right, like, let me try and help you, like, highlight what you're doing at school. Let's try and fix this. Like, for example, my partner, Jose, his little brother is 19 now, but at the time when he was like 16, 17, and I was helping him with his resumes, I don't think ChatGPT was around. And so I spent like 4 hours trying to do his and like one of our other friends' resumes on separate occasions. And now I can just do that in like maybe an hour tops with ChatGPT, writing out all the big picture stuff for me. Now, I love writing. I very much so hate relying on ChatGPT to do the writing for me. But when it comes to resume and having to get around all this like word soup that they want you to hit for their weird Christmas tree markers, I very much so recommend. So moving on to interviews. Okay. So interviews again. What do? You calm down because interviewing, yes, is scary, but interviewing is cool. And I just did my first interview for the first time today, where I had to interview someone to replace the role that's now open because I'm transitioning in the company. It was weird. It was very weird because I was like, why am I interviewing someone? That's weird. Like, I just had to interview with somebody else. So it actually is weird for the person interviewing you as well, but you want to highlight your skills. So like I had mentioned prior, right? If you're working on this personal project outside of school, whether it's like a website or you're trying to maybe do a website of your own resume, or if you're maybe going to pen testing, so you're trying to do hack the box and things on maybe HackerOne, you want to highlight those and that you're doing them. Highlight what you're good at, enunciate what you're good at, but be transparent about what you're not good at. If you do, the one thing I want to get across, and one thing that I think is phenomenal to note down, is in an interview, do not be afraid to say that you do not know, because they want you to admit and defeat. They're really trying to trick you. It's like admit defeat. It's in a funny way, but admit that you don't know, but what you do know. So if somebody asks you what you would do if like a customer starts freaking out, they don't expect you to know exactly what to do. They expect you to go, hey, I'm so sorry, but I've never experienced this, because they know you don't have that experience based on your resume. But that reminds me of a situation like this, and I did XYZ in that. Or if you have nothing to reference, you go, hey, actually, for this one, I genuinely am not sure. I've never experienced anything like this. I haven't had to see something like this. I can't think of anything similar. However, I'd be really interested to see how that would be handled, and to maybe have upper management, whatever, right? You finagle your way out of it. The biggest thing is that you're honest. And if you think you have some relevant experience that's not the same, you make sure you clarify, you go off that. And if you have nothing, you have nothing. And that's okay. And you want to be yourself, because if you think an interviewer wants maybe someone not as bubbly, or they want someone bubbly and you're not bubbly, at the end of the day, this is going to be your job, and you will get very burned out if you're trying to be whoever you think they want, because either you were wrong and they now don't want to hire you because they think you don't really match with what they were looking for, or two, you're now pretending to be this person that you really aren't. You've somehow managed to get this far, and it's going to cause burnout. Now, something that has been told to me and that I'm going to highlight in an example really close is that if a listing has 40% of the things that you don't know, like on a application, right? And 40% of the information you kind of do, and then the other 20%, it's like in the air. Apply. It does not hurt to apply to a role. It is actually very good for you to apply because even if you're not qualified and you get that interview, that is phenomenal interview experience. Another thing is I always recommend asking for feedback at the end of your interview. This is something I have always done and I have always gotten really good feedback on it, is that I asked for feedback on what I did towards the end of my interviews. So moving on to an example, we're going to go over my help desk position that I had. And we're going to go over the actual, I went on LinkedIn, I was able to look at my old saves. So the fact that I was able to find this is incredible. This is what it looked like, right? And we saw what my resume looked like at the time. But I highlighted it anyway just to go over, right? This was a contract position. It wasn't. I was there for 8 months, and we were W-2 and stuff. Basically, provide support to end users for computer application. This is something that I kind of did, kind of didn't, right? Passionate about technology, that's something I definitely had, right? At the time, I'm a junior in college. I only really have my personal projects, right, that I highlighted. I was an Intel person, but again, that was sales. So I tried to spin that on my resume to be more technical, like, oh, I was training the Best Buy employees on Intel and stuff, which I was, but that was maybe like 10% of my role. So minimal relevant experience here. And I applied anyway, because again, I was told that I need help desk if as my entry level as experience if I want cybersecurity. And let me tell you, I wanted to be in cybersecurity. So I said, what in the heck? I mean, the worst thing that happens is I just don't get an email back. That doesn't hurt me in any way. So if we break down how qualified I was for this position, since this was a local place, I got a little lucky. If you're in a population dense area and you have a big college near you and you have all these people studying the same thing you do, they're probably all going for these jobs. In my case, I think they said there was like maybe like 30 or 50 or 80 other candidates for this one that had happened. And now at the company I'm at, we get like 500. So if you're in a popular area, you're probably going to be competing with more people. But just for simplicity's sake, we're going to break down how I technically qualified for this role, right? Passionate about technology, super easy to hit. I hit that one. Advanced knowledge of Windows. Okay. I'm now a junior. I have my associates. I'm pretty familiar with Windows. I'm not familiar with Linux really at all. I'm familiar with Microsoft Office, kind of. I'm not an Excel wizard, but I know how to make a PowerPoint. Just general desktop tools. I had never heard of Active Directory in my life. I wasn't really familiar with PC architecture at all, to be honest with you. I had probably no knowledge of data integrity concepts because, again, when I started college, it was 2020, so it was COVID. So it was this weird, like, not as full time as I would have loved it to be. And because it was kind of online, a lot of the learning was take this quiz that has answers that are available on the web and not do this actual activity that I curated that will teach you things. So I really didn't retain a lot from my beginning part. I was solely relying on the physical things I had done, like building the computers, physically working with these devices, physical projects I had done. So Active Directory, PC architecture, not a chance. Knowledge of data integrity concepts, especially relating to data backup, recovery, and disaster, no. Associate's degree and computer science are similar. Boom, that is what I had just obtained. So we have a plus. So if you look and kind of how I highlighted these things, it's looking like 40, 40, 20, right? Like, okay, I'm hitting some of this 40% of the stuff. There's another 40%, excuse me, that I'm probably not hitting on their ideal candidate. And then there's a gray area, right? Anyway, moving on, the associate's degree in computer science or in computer science are similar preferred, right? I had my Associates of Science in Information Technology. So I'm hitting that pretty much on the head. That would qualify as the similar preferred. Or, and peep this, any combination of equivalent education and work experience. So this is where them valuing those like off projects that you've done that you can turn into experience. And they are allowing that to coincide with education while you're still in school, because a lot of places are starting to realize that if you're physically doing something, just because it's not college, it's still valuable and you're still learning and you're still capable to execute. Now, the one thing here, I did not have 1 to 2 years of experience in help desk while having an associate's degree, right? 0 to 2 years of progressive experience in a help desk role with a bachelor's degree. I had neither of those, right? But it's because of the other aspects that I was able to kind of get my way on that, right? I went in for the interview. They're asking me questions. They asked me what Active Directory is. I go, I'm going to be honest with you, I have never used that before. I know that there's a lot of tools that I'm going to have to utilize that I'll have to learn. And I was just honest and I was transparent. And that's what I really, really try and preach. Okay, so basically my notes are when interviewing, there's going to be some I don't know. There's going to be some I'm unsure, and there are going to be some, hey, I actually have experience or equivalent experience doing XYZ. This is how it went. And so what I really hope gets taken is there are many things you can do outside of school. You can take actions to try and work on personal projects. They value when you attend things like this, trying to broaden your horizons, trying to expand. And things like this do allow you to do that. This learning things and hearing people talk might allow you to now have more context in the back of your head when interviewing on things to reference that you might know that you might not have thought about before. When trying to network with people, it's really about being transparent, being you, making sure that you weigh how much you talk about that you do and don't know. Because I can go on for a long time about things that I do not know, but you have to balance it because if you talk too much about things you don't know, they'll go, oh, well, they said I don't know a lot. That's why I try to emphasize in some of my explanations of, hey, I'm not sure on this one, but what I think is similar is XYZ, and I did this. Because now you still have a story to tell them. You're still probably hitting on the kind of like points that they want, which is how you would handle your thought process, like personality, experience. But at the end of the day, you don't want to over cloud your capabilities because that in itself, even if you are capable, is kind of a turnoff to recruiters. If they go, oh, like it seemed like they were capable, but they were kind of blowing some smoke up their butt about a lot of things. I don't really think we want somebody who has that big of an ego. We want someone who's teachable. So genuinely, you should be yourself. If you were confident and excited about things you did in school, that's great. And you should definitely be excited about them. But there's a very obvious difference when trying to network with people and also to recruiters of being excited and talking about what you did and trying to twist what you did into like this major thing that would make you qualified for whatever internship or role they're hiring for. But at the end of the day, I hope this is helpful on small actions that you can take outside of the classroom, some comfort when you go into interview or when you try and network with people at conferences, because I know it can be intimidating. And overall, just a nice little Ned's Declassified style-esque presentation on what I would kind of have written down for myself 4 years ago when I started like college and everything. I mean, I just turned 23. So from like my journey 17 when I graduated high school to basically now as a person who I would say is finally starting like my first very much so official cybersecurity role and things that I think are helpful and that helped me a lot. And of course, again, I did get lucky on a lot of things, but the feedback that I've gotten whenever I tell people that is actually that, you know, you did get lucky, but it wasn't luck that you put yourself in those positions to get lucky. So that's the feedback that I've gotten, and I've been trying to take that to heart recently, and I would like to spread that with everybody else. So I hope that that came across, and I just want to say thank you again, everybody who is here. I really appreciate it. Um, I try to have my slides be all fancy and stuff. My sources, I basically just one when I reference different roles. SANS is a phenomenal institute. They have like top 20 coolest cybersecurity degrees. If you are trying to figure out what you want to do, you could start honestly with that page. They do a pretty good job. But that's mainly for the sector of cybersecurity that I'm in, which again I think is super cool. So you should take a look sees anyway. But um, with that being said, I think that wraps up everything. I really appreciate everyone sitting here to listen to me.